What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here. Bright and early on a Friday, March the 14th. Conference tournaments are continuing. Friday and Saturday this week, I think, are the two best days of college basketball all year. There's so much beauty to the first and second round of the actual NCAA tournament, but half of your games are Auburn versus Bryan, 16s versus 1s, 15s versus 2s. Today, tomorrow, in these conferences, we're talking about 20 plus matchups of teams that are at the top of their conferences, at least 10 plus ranked matchups between these elite teams. And tomorrow, when we get to the semis for a lot of these conferences, we're getting games like potentially Irvine versus San Diego, games that are going to be tournament ceiling games with potential at-larges for the loser. It's an amazing time of year. I won't waste any more of your time. We'll dive right into it. There's a ton of games. Before we get started, if you like this content, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. All of that helps a ton. We've seen a lot of growth over the last couple of days and last couple of weeks, really. I appreciate your time. If you're even just listening to this for one game, it means a lot. We're up at the first number on the alarm clock this morning was a 2. So we're trying to work hard to put some of this out for you. But let's dive in. First up, Ole Miss and Auburn. And if this seems a little disjointed, we talk about the games first that ended first yesterday, just to save time. So some of the games that had the late night implications, the Arizonas, the Kansases, stuff like that, that'll be later in the show. Ole Miss takes on Auburn. This game is a 11.5 point spread currently in favor of Auburn. The total is 154. There's no major injuries in the game. Both of these teams have been playing through injury. Matthew Morrell for Ole Miss has been banged up really the whole year. In Auburn, Baker Mazzara has been hurt for periods of time. Denver Jones, he's come back from his injury, so I think there's a little bit more security with his health. Janai Broome re-aggravates his injuries, multiple, every single game, and he never misses time. The guy's a warrior. Auburn's off the bye. They had the double bye as the number 1 seed. Ole Miss beat Arkansas yesterday by 3 points. What a crazy game that was in the second round of the SEC tournament. But they hold off Arkansas. And that was wild. Brazil missed some free throws at the end of the game. Purdue hits a big shot, so they get the win. In the regular season, Auburn took both of these games. They won 92-82 on the road, and then they crushed Ole Miss at home, 106-76. Killed them on the glass in both games, shot the ball better in both contests, and that's kind of what this is. I would break the whole game down to there's levels to this. Ole Miss is 5-6 against the top 25. Their best ones are against Bama, Kentucky, and Tennessee, but they also beat BYU and Louisville. 2 losses outside the top 40 of Memphis and Vandy. Auburn just has the best body of work in the country. Only top 20 losses, the worst of which was in that sleepy spot against Texas A&M after they clinched the conference regular season. Otherwise, they haven't lost to anyone outside the top 6. Wins over Iowa State, Houston, Tennessee, Bama, you name it, they have it, except for maybe a Florida. But this team is so complete. And the biggest advantage they have in this game is height. Ole Miss is limited. 273rd in effective height, 321st in rebounding. Auburn, 35th in rebounding. Very tall team, tons of length. This was a huge mismatch in the first 2 games. Auburn out-rebounded this Ole Miss team by over 10 in both offensive boards. When Auburn missed shots, which was not often, they were able to clean up on the glass. And that's how you get double-digit wins in both of these games, with the second one by 30 points. Ole Miss is a decent shooting team too, but they're not going to be able to score inside against Chaney Johnson and Janai Broome and Cardwell. That's the other thing too, is Auburn's so deep. Someone fouls, which they do often, the depth allows them to play aggressive, and it's hard to score on this team in the paint. And if you're shooting threes, Ole Miss is decent at this. I think conference play has really hindered them a little bit. Their numbers have fallen, 125th in three-point percentage. Padula and Murray are actually very good. It's basically just Morrell and Dre Davis that are at 31% apiece and bringing these numbers down. But even on the perimeter, Auburn's 8th in defending that area of the floor. It's just like a good luck situation for Ole Miss. And conversely, if you're not attacking the rim with Janai Broome, Tahad Pettiford, Miles Kelly, Denver Jones, Baker Mazzara, all hitting at least 38% of their threes. And when you look at the defensive numbers, you might actually be impressed by Ole Miss. This is because they forced the 35th most turnovers in the country. Auburn has the 4th fewest turnovers on offense. Insane mismatch. You want to look at Ole Miss defensively. They're 186th in interior defense. 115 from the three, just massive problems all over the place. I played a minus 10.5 at open. We actually make this efficient mathematically, but I think there's some stylistics you could dive into and give Auburn an additional boost in this situation. They won by 30 in the last game on the home court. And Auburn is actually, narrative-wise, in a pretty good spot if you think they're motivated for the SEC tournament, which I do. They've taken some losses recently. So big game for Auburn. We'll play them minus the 10.5, and I'm honestly okay with the current number. Texas takes on Tennessee, will remain in the SEC. 10-point spread in favor of Tennessee. 135 total. No major injuries now that Weaver's back for this Texas team. Tennessee might have some guys banged up. Milicic has been hurt for a part of the year. He's been playing fewer minutes, but I think he'll be okay. We'll see. Anyway, Texas has now played 2 straight days. They had to play Vandy in the opening round. They won by a score of 79-72, and then they knocked off Texas A&M in a double overtime game yesterday. And Texas appears to be playing better. That's a lot of game time to accrue in 2 days while Tennessee was chilling on a double bye, but that's what we have here. Tennessee won the first game they played 74-70. That was on January 11th. Texas only shot 28% from three. Tennessee hit 43.5% of their threes. Tennessee crushed Texas on the glass 41-27, and that allowed them to survive 15 turnovers. Tennessee is 6-4 against the top 25, beating Louisville, Illinois, Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M, and Bama. Only 2 losses outside the top 25 all year, Vandy by 1 point and Ole Miss. Texas, conversely, 3-5 against the top 25, beat Missouri and Texas A&M twice at 17. They have 4 losses outside the top 40, Arkansas, Vandy, South Carolina. They dropped to Arkansas twice, actually. And now, even with the wins, they still have only won 4 of their last 11 games. It's just 2 of them were in the last 2 days. I think Tennessee has a lot of advantages here. 51st in effective height, 20th in rebounding. Texas is much smaller, and they're 143rd in rebounding. Texas also a pretty good shooting team overall, but it's kind of just like Trey Johnson does everything for them, which honestly kind of parallels Tennessee, who basically relies on Chaz Lanier shooting threes. He's the only one above 32% on their team, but he's a 40% shooter, whereas Trey Johnson's at 39.5%. And you get almost identical effective field goal percentages because of this. You get Texas at 93, Tennessee at 87, Tennessee a little better at the rim, Texas slightly better from three, but both teams comprise similarly. But you just have defensive advantages for Tennessee. They're 18th inside the arc, 2nd in three-point defense. So even where Tennessee might lack on the inside, it's just still a top 20 unit. Very hard to score on Tennessee across the board. And meanwhile, Texas is 54th at defending the interior. That's basically just a Caden Shedrick stat. He's very good on the inside, and he's long, so he can defend the perimeter. And then they're 143 defending the perimeter themselves. Turnover margin's about even. Tennessee is the foul advantage. Honestly, if the pace wasn't so poor, I would consider playing Tennessee. I think if you've watched these videos, even for just a day, you watched a Texas video yesterday, it was the same conclusion. The model likes Texas more than I do. It had Texas as the value. I didn't have the heart to play it because I do not think Rodney Terry's a good coach. And I've seen a lot of Texas games that were very ugly this year. You can't lose to South Carolina and come away impressed with this team. But at the end of the day, with a pace this bad, because Tennessee plays so slow, the value of the point is so high. I think you could also hang your hat on Texas playing better of late, now that they're fully healthy. Rodney Terry in the postgame was talking about how much Chendo Weaver meant to this team. I didn't realize a 20-minute rotational player who's been a career underachiever meant so much to the team. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not Rodney Terry. I'm not a college basketball coach. But they are fully healthy now, so that's at least worth mentioning. It'll be a lead in Texas's direction. Texas is already taking money. I think the time to bet them is now. If you want to, I'm probably out on this. Speaking of, as you know, we are talking about betting. If you or somebody you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 or older to play. Missouri takes on Florida. 8.5-point spread in favor of Florida, 161.5 total. This spread is elevated a little bit. We make it inside the 8.5, but Missouri does have a key injury. Mark Mitchell left the game yesterday and did not return. We don't know about his status. This is very important. Missouri does play an incredibly deep rotation, so I guess that works in their favor, but Mitchell is among the best players on this team. And they had to play yesterday. They did beat Mississippi State. It wasn't particularly close. Florida was chilling, so they have the extra rest. Missouri did win the first game between these teams. Just an awesome game, 83-82. Both teams shot the ball well. Rebounding was almost equal. Florida had 13 turnovers to Missouri's 8, but almost everything peripherally was identical. Just a crazy, almost equal game. Florida 3-3 against the top 25. Impressive wins over Tennessee, Auburn, and Bama. Have only lost to their worst losses to Georgia at 33. And their other 3 losses are in the top 25. So elite body of work. Missouri's 3-5 against the top 25, beating Florida, Alabama, and Kansas. 5 losses outside the top 30, but none of them are lower than Memphis at 49. So a very good body of work from Missouri as well. And when you look stylistically between these teams, Florida, the problem that they're going to pose for you is size. How do you deal with Howe and Chenyulu and Henlockton being back and Condon? They go 4 deep in there, but Missouri is 30th in effective height. The problem is they're 127th in rebounding, and at least towards the end of the regular season, this team was getting pounded on the glass. They were getting pounded inside. They're 151st in interior defense. That drops outside the top 200 if you isolate conference play. Florida, with those 4 bigs, is 34th in interior scoring, and I think there's some meat left on the bone considering they haven't been healthy for a lot of the year. Condon missed time. Henlockton obviously is just getting his feet wet. And if you want Florida to shoot threes, let's say you dedicate extra resources to the interior. First of all, Missouri, 181st in perimeter defense. It's not a strength either. Their best asset is their turnovers forced, which is not a problem for Florida. They cannot turn the ball over offensively often. 40th in turnovers committed. But you have 3 shooters that are capable. They're not elite. All of them hit at least 36% of their threes, led by Walter Clayton. But still, they're a top 100 three-point percent team in the country. This is a problem against Missouri. So to sum all this up, peripherally, there's nothing too, at least worth pointing out. I think it's pretty even across the board. Foul margin, I'm not worried. And turnovers, honestly, maybe favors Missouri slightly, but Florida just not turning it over. Missouri's going to have to shoot their way out of this. Offensively, they are awesome. Top 30 in both 2-point and 3-point percentage. The problem is Florida is the 12th ranked defense. They're 8th inside, 7th from 3. The only reason they're trailing a little bit is they're 159th in turnovers forced. There's a brutal matchup against this Florida team for a Missouri team that has particularly struggled to defend the inside. With Mark Mitchell being out, we make this outside the current spread. I had him left in just because we don't know his status for sure. I'm still not playing Missouri even if Mark Mitchell warms up and plays, but I would be interested in Florida and probably hit this number immediately if he's out. And that will be available in Discord. On that quickly, we're projecting all the game sides and totals in Discord, and we're projecting player props for all the major games and whatever mid-majors are provided to us by the platforms. We have the March Madness tool projecting every single game spread and total throughout the entire bracket if that's something that interests you. It is only $10 for a week, so you could even just jump in on Sunday for the first week of March Madness. Or if you want access throughout the entire tournament, that's where bets go ahead of time. If we play something due to injury, that's where they go after the video. That is available for $30 for the month too. Link is in the description. Thank you guys. If you've taken advantage of that and supported it, means a lot. Closing out the SEC. Kentucky takes on Alabama. It's a 6-point spread in favor of the Crimson Tide. A 180.5 total. That's just kind of what you get with Alabama games. A lot of injuries. Lamont Butler got hurt yesterday, re-aggravated the shoulder. Jackson Robinson's out. Kirk Reese is out. Bama, Latrell Wrightsell's out. Darion Reed probably not returning this year. We'll see. Maybe the tournament. I don't know. But Kentucky's already had to play. They had a crazy game against Oklahoma yesterday. They won on a buzzer beater from Otega Oweh by 1 point. Alabama was chilling on a bye. Alabama took both regular season games. The first one was much closer. They won by 5. That was with a healthy Kentucky, but Kentucky still got out-rebounded and fouled 25 times. Alabama's going to do that to you. Second game, they lost by 13. They did not have Butler or Robinson. Same issues. Got outshot, fouled a ton, got outboarded. Bama has one of the best rosters in the country, and there's nothing – I can't say much more that's negative about Kentucky because this team – has been hurt all year. They're 8-4 against the top 25. 8-4. Now, some of these wins came at full strength. They beat Duke, Gonzaga, Louisville, Florida, Tennessee twice. Unbelievable body of work for Kentucky. Their losses, they have 5 outside the top 30, but none are lower than Vanderbilt. It's crazy that this team has been able to overcome so much. But Bama, again, this is a levels to this kind of thing. 6-5 against the top 25, wins over Illinois, Houston, A&M, Kentucky, Auburn. 2 losses outside the top 25, 27 Ole Miss, 31 Oregon. I mean, this is an elite body of work as well. And now you have the health working in your favor because Kentucky's going to have to play a third-string point guard. Honestly, one thing they've been doing is playing Amari Williams at point guard, who's a 6'11 forward. Playing the point forward game is a little weird, and it's, I guess, tough to defend, but it also leaves you limited offensively if you're Kentucky. Turnovers I would be very scared of in this game. Again, so there's just some limitations you're going to run into. If Butler doesn't suit up, I would be surprised if we see him. And that doesn't even include Bama's the taller team already. Bama's 15th on the glass, Kentucky 67th. That was an advantage for Bama in both of their first games. Bama has regressed positively from three-point percentage. They're 109th on the year. They're now top 50 since conference play started, up above 37%. Sears has played a lot better there. You're getting awesome three-point percentage out of Youngblood, who's in increased minutes. And then Kentucky's defense still has spots where they're lagging. 269th on the inside. Alabama is third in interior scoring. Most of that actually comes from guards driving the ball and Grant Nelson. You have some limitations at the 5 spot. I think that's Bama's biggest concern moving forward, where you're splitting time between, like when Amori's on the floor, he can defend. He can't do anything on offense. You just run into problems. Some 5 play is limited in some way. On the periphery, if you want to beat Bama, you can turn them over. Sears has been crazy with the ball at times. They're 159th in turnovers committed. But Kentucky's 339th at turnovers forced, and without Butler, who's their best on-ball defender, you're just not really live to force turnovers. We played the Alabama -6. We don't know for sure if Butler's out, so I left him in the model just so you could see what it would be worth. But we do have Butler worth more than 2 points to the spread. 6 points is completely fine. This is playing the Crimson Tide. I do not think we see Butler the rest of the way until we get to the actual NCAA tournament. That is speculation. But I think we have a pretty good sense of how they're going to play this. Big East rematch. Marquette takes on St. John's. 5-point spread in favor of St. John's. 141 total. Only injury in the game. I listed Davon Smith for St. John's. He only played 12 minutes yesterday, but I don't know if they really needed him. Let's just get right into that. The way the Big East is structured, every team that's still left had to play yesterday. St. John's kicked the snot out of Butler, 78-57. So maybe that's why Smith only played 12 minutes. I don't know why you would push him, especially in that game. But he's their best shooter. He is important. And we saw his status matter in the matchups previously. Marquette had a crazy comeback and beat Xavier 89-87. So both these teams, these teams played, what was it, last Saturday? I guess let's just talk about that right now. Their most recent game, I guess St. John's, I'm going to go back to the first one first, and then we'll do the second one. So that first game, St. John's won 70-64. They only shot 19% from 3, but they out-rebounded Marquette 50-28. Just a crazy game. The second one was closer. Davon Smith didn't play, but St. John's wins 86-84 in overtime in Milwaukee on a buzzer beater from Zuby Ejiofor. They still out-rebounded Marquette 46-42. Not as bad, but a lot of those came on the offensive glass. So you had St. John's poor shooting game again, but just their ability to offensive board, they get so many second chance opportunities. St. John's had 2 fewer turnovers. It was an uncharacteristically bad free throw shooting game for Marquette, 55%, and St. John's uncharacteristically good, 71%. So it's a very close game, but you get the weird outcome at the end because of some of the peripheral stats. St. John's has not played a top 25 team this year. By power ranking status, their best win is over Marquette. Their next best wins are UConn, swept them too, so that's pretty good. 4 losses outside the top 25. Baylor at 28, Georgia 33, Creighton 36, Nova at 55. Not too bad. Marquette's 3-3 against the top 25. They definitely have the higher end wins. Maryland, Purdue, and Wisconsin. They also have the lower end losses. Dayton at 73 also dropped to Nova. And they've now been swept by St. John's and UConn. They played split series to Creighton, Xavier, and Villanova. Marquette has not looked good recently, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know. On the glass, this is a massive advantage for St. John's. 27th in rebounding. Marquette is 223, and that's with Marquette being taller. They just have Ben Gold standing in the corner, so he doesn't rebound. More on that in a second. I've been very critical of Ben Gold for doing that, but I think there honestly is more merit to it than I might have previously mentioned. Just on that, Marquette can't shoot. Neither can St. John's. Marquette's a little better. They're 115th in effective field goal. That's because they can get to the rim. They're 236 from three. Cam Jones hit 50% of his three yesterday. He's still at 31% on the year. And you're facing an elite St. John's defense. David Joplin, the second most prolific shooter, 31%. Ben Gold has shot the third most threes. He's at 37%. At least he's hitting some. So you kind of need Ben Gold to stand in the corner and hit threes because no one else is doing it on this team. St. John's is similar. They're 251 in effective field goal. They're taking way, way fewer threes than Marquette. But when they do, extremely reliant on Davon Smith at 37%. So that's why his status is important in this game for some floor spacing stuff. But otherwise on defense, both teams pretty good overall. St. John's definitely has the edge. They're third overall in defensive efficiency, and they do everything Marquette does well, but a little better. Both teams are top 15 in turnovers for, so that metric is close. But especially like defending the interior, Marquette is very weak there, 197th. St. John's plays with length. This is a good matchup for Ejiofor. And then they have massive guards like Kadari Richmond when he plays point guard at 6'6". It's tough. But it's going to be a matchup, I think, that is decided largely on Marquette's ability to mitigate the offensive glass. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that. They did a better job in the second game. I don't think it's going to be as big of an advantage as it was in the first game, but we'll see here. It's going to be tough for Marquette. It's a lot of points. We make this basically efficient side and total. This is the game I have the least interest in betting. If you force me to pick a side, it would probably be over just because pace is pretty good in this game. Both teams can get up and down and run. Oregon takes on Michigan State. This game is a 6-point spread in favor of the Spartans, 143 total. No major injuries in the game. Oregon just beat Indiana in the second round of the Big Ten tournament. Michigan State had a double bye. These teams played on February 8th. Michigan State won 86-74. They just basically outshot this Oregon team, hit 44% of their threes, out-rebounded Oregon 40-27, drew 22 fouls. Awesome body of work for Michigan State, especially of late. They're 5-2 against the top 25, and most of those games have come recently. They had a very easy schedule at the beginning of the year. Have dropped games to Memphis, USC, and Indiana outside the top 45, so somewhat concerning. But Oregon, they have some of the higher-end wins. This team beat Bama, Maryland, Wisconsin, and Texas A&M, and 3 of them were away from home. That's great for Oregon. They've played well on neutrals, but they also lost to Nebraska and Minnesota outside the top 50. I think it's a pretty tough matchup for Oregon. Michigan State rebounds at one of the best units in the country. So, yeah, both these teams are tall, 20 and 21 in effective height, but Michigan State 20 on the glass, Oregon 121. That was a huge advantage the first time they played. People will tell you Michigan State can't shoot. I've been critical of Izzo for the rotation he's played all year. They're awesome at getting to the rim. That's the best place they score, but this team has been better from three. And to me, that comes down to they're finally playing their freshman, their stud, Jace Richardson, full minutes. 39% of his threes are going in. He's their best shooter by a mile, and he was playing 20 minutes a game to start the year. And he's young and takes time to acclimate to Izzo's system. Now that he's out there, I actually have more confidence in Michigan State. They're going to hit more shots, not by a ton, but more still better. And when they don't, they board at a crazy rate. Oregon, they are due for positive regression from three. We've been saying that all year, so maybe that is past. We can get beyond that. But Bartholomew and Shellstad still over 38% of their threes go in. Bamba's been horrible. This guy was shooting like 36% last year. He's at like 24, 25. And you're shooting into an elite defense. Michigan State 6 overall, third at defending the three, 81st inside. They're going to be really reliant on Biddle here. He's up and down. He's been very good of late, so they can score, but turnovers can be an issue for Michigan State. The only problem is Oregon's not super good at forcing them. Couple things we played here. I hit Michigan State at the 5 immediately. I still think that is playable. It's obviously more efficient now. And then pacing-wise is a little above average for both teams, but good luck scoring on Michigan State and Oregon. No slouch on defense either. So we played under 144 in this game. Illinois takes on Maryland. 1.5-point spread in favor of the Terps, 159 total. No major injuries now that Morris Johnson returned for Illinois. He played 12 minutes in the last game. just getting his feet wet as Illinois beat Iowa 106-94 in a shootout, and McCaffrey got ejected in his final game. You love to see it. Maryland had a bye. First game, Maryland crushed Illinois 91-70. Illinois didn't have Ivisic. This has been a problem for them all year. They have not been healthy. Tons of sickness have gone through this team. But Tomislav Ivisic is back playing his role. Maryland won in the glass, forced 16 turnovers and 22 fouls. It's probably some of the bigger concerns for Illinois in this game. Maryland 3-2 against the top 25, beat Illinois, Wisconsin, UCLA. Their worst losses to Washington, but pretty good body of work. Illinois 4-7 against the top 25. Beat Wisconsin, Missouri, UCLA, Purdue. Lost to Northwestern, USC, Nebraska, and Rutgers outside the top 45. A lot of those came down to injuries, illnesses, is what it is with Illinois. They're still hard to evaluate. This team really can't shoot. 317th in three-point percentage, Maryland 34th. Inside, that's where Illinois has to score. The problem is they're going to be going against Derek Queen and Julian Reese, who are 51st in interior defense. They're not deep, but this Maryland team is very complete with their guards. All of them can shoot. Inside, they have a lottery pick and a veteran in Julian Reese. They just don't go deep. You're getting minutes out of Geronimo and Harris Smith off the bench occasionally. They've gone full games without bench minutes. But they've been able to withstand this because they don't foul. Illinois is not great at generating fouls, so I think this is going to be okay. On the glass, Illinois is 9th. They do play the taller lineup, especially now that Morris is back. But again, Maryland's been efficient, even though Queen and Reese aren't that tall. They're 6'9 and 6'10, but I'm not really betting against them ever. And then offensively, Maryland can score inside and out. So I don't really see any super clean advantages. The best path for Illinois is attacking inside against Reese and Queen, hoping they get in foul trouble. For Maryland, it's going to be attacking the perimeter defense of the Illini that ranks 85th overall. Illinois just doesn't force any turnovers, so that's going to be a problem. They're basically losing the turnover margin in every game, 355th in turnovers forced. Maryland forces a lot. They're 48th, and Illinois can give the ball up. It's not often, but they're 69th in turnovers committed, so not a fantastic metric. They gave it up 16 times in this first game, too. Illinois is still a value according to the numbers. We make this about a half point in favor of Maryland, almost a pick 'em. I don't know if I have the heart to back Illinois in this spot against Maryland off rest. I love the starting five for Maryland. I'm always going to be concerned with depth for this team. Illinois does not have that. They've actually been playing a lot better now that they've figured out their rotation and brought Trey White back into the fold. But man, it's tough. I think it's probably just going to be stay away and see where this goes throughout the day. I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois takes money and then perhaps considering a Maryland sign. For all their strengths, they did also just give up 94 points to Iowa yesterday, who barely made the tournament, Big Ten tournament. So it is what it is. This will likely be a pass, but we'll see where it goes through the day. Awesome game overall for viewing. Awesome game. Arguably the best of the day, and there's a lot you could put in that argument. You could make it for this one, though. Purdue, Michigan. This game is a 3-point spread in favor of Purdue. 147.5 total. No major injuries, just some depth pieces. Purdue just beat USC 76-71. Michigan had a bye. These teams split the regular season. Purdue crushed them at home, 91-64, forced 22 turnovers. That'll happen in Michigan games. Michigan cleaned it up in the second one. They won 75-73, only turned it over 11 times. But Purdue fouled 23 times, so that's what happened. Michigan's body of work is tough to parse. A lot of people are down on them recently after their most recent body of work. We'll get there. 3-5 against the top 25, beat Wisconsin, UCLA, and Purdue. 4 losses outside the top 35 to Wake, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Minnesota. Those are bad. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games and 4 of their last 6. So all those losses came against top 25 teams in the last 3 games. The 2 wins in that span, this is the real concern. Nebraska and Rutgers came by combined 5 points. So it's like when you play top 25 teams, like you'll lose games. This just happened to Bama. It's happening to Auburn right now. The natural instinct is to write these teams off. I don't think there's any shame in losing to Michigan State and some of these opponents that Michigan's lost to. There is shame in winning by 5 points combined against Nebraska and Rutgers, though, and that's the hole I would poke. Purdue, they've had some of the same struggles, just they're kind of comprised a little bit differently. 3-5 against the top 25, beat Bama, crazy game in the early season. Maryland and UCLA. This team also has losses to Penn State, Indiana, so it's not all roses either. But stylistically, this is going to be a weird game, and I'm not sure how it's going to go. It's crazy we've seen it play out twice and play out differently in both. Purdue cannot defend the inside. Trey Kaufman-Wren's been awesome on offense, scoring 20-plus points, all but one game in his last 10. But 343 in interior defense, you're showing up with that against Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. I mean, like, Michigan should be able to do whatever they want inside against this Purdue defense, which is atrocious. Just flat out do not have the bodies inside to stand up against the pair of 7-footers Michigan's putting on the floor. With that said, Purdue is 113th in turnovers forced. Michigan 336 in turnovers committed. They exploited this in the first game. They didn't in the second. They have the path here to exploit this defense. And when you turn it over 22 times, you're not going to win games, especially shooting like Michigan is. 188th in three-point percentage. Trey Donaldson's actually still been fine shooting the ball, but this team has dropped outside the top 300 in three-point percent over the last month. Outside the top 200 since January in conference. Purdue's the exact opposite. They'll shoot the ball over the top of you. 9th in three-point percentage, largely Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. Michigan's a little weaker from the perimeter. They're 76 defending the three, so they have another advantage here. Michigan's better on the glass. That should surprise no one. Second in effective height. Purdue, 104th. This is a really volatile game. Clear advantages on both sides. Again, Michigan scoring inside against that horrific Purdue defense. And for Purdue, it's largely just, and on the glass for Michigan too, but for Purdue, it's largely shooting threes and forcing turnovers. I think there's value on the Purdue side, but this is coming in with money on Michigan. So right now, we make it about -2.5 in favor, -3.5 in favor of Purdue, but Michigan is taking money. At 2.5, I'm probably going to fire. I don't see it yet, but I'm seeing a lot of these Purdue -3s at -105. So this is probably going to come at some point. This will be in Discord, but that's the number I'm looking for. I'm probably going to play a Purdue side. I don't think anything's going to change my mind throughout the morning. Wisconsin, UCLA. This game is a 1.5-point spread. 142.5 total. I was a coward. I went to bed. It was -1, and I did not play it, but I did play the 1.5 this morning. Wisconsin beat up on Northwestern yesterday, while UCLA had a bye. UCLA did take the first matchup in this series, 85-83. They were at home, so Wisconsin across the country. Wisconsin still shot 50% from three and found a way to lose. Rebounding was close, but Wisconsin had 23 fouls and 13 turnovers. And also, this Wisconsin interior has weird lapses with Nolan Winter and Carter Gilmore. They let Ade Mara score 22 points off the bench. Now, I'm a huge Ade Mara fan. This guy needs to play more minutes for UCLA. Honestly, some of the games UCLA's lost is because he's been in single-digit minutes. You look at the game against Purdue, who has one of the weakest interiors in the entire country. We just mentioned how they're 343 in interior defense. Mick Cronin thought it would be a good idea to play Ade Mara 6 minutes. 6 minutes! So that works against them. What is Mick Cronin going to decide to do? But Wisconsin plays a fairly tall lineup. I'm not sure he's going to have a lot of choices. UCLA's 4-3 against the top 25. Beat Arizona, Gonzaga, Wisconsin, Michigan State. Their worst losses to Rutgers and Minnesota. But otherwise, it's a pretty decent body of work. They're just up and down, and they don't always have their rotation figured out. Another example of that is their most efficient player has been Eric Daly. He's locked at like 25 minutes. Just confusing. They do have a kid from Milwaukee, though, so I'll always cheer for Kobe Johnson. Anyway, Wisconsin 3-4 against the top 25. Arizona, Purdue, and Illinois are the wins. They've lost a few games lately. Their worst loss came in their season finale against Penn State. Perhaps Wisconsin looking ahead a little bit there against a Penn State team that was playing for their lives. They did not have a chance to make the Big Ten tournament, so I guess everything was on the line for them there, and it was mainly just pride. But in this game, Wisconsin holds the height advantage, not by much. Rebounding advantage certainly in favor of Wisconsin, 64-137. The only fear is that Ade Mara plays more on a whim of Mick Cronin. Wisconsin's the better shooting team. 54th overall in effective field goal, 33rd inside. That beats UCLA at 86th overall, or 86 in 2-point and 73 from effective field goal percentage overall. UCLA is the better 3-point shooting numbers. 89 to 109, but Wisconsin shooting way more of them. Defensively, this is where things are interesting because Wisconsin's 56 inside, UCLA's 201. From three, UCLA is better, 76 to 159. And turnovers are where this really separates. UCLA's defensive numbers are boosted up to 15 because this team is fifth in turnovers forced. Wisconsin is 17th in turnovers committed. So this does not project to be a massive mismatch on paper. It kind of was in the first game. 13 turnovers is not a ton. It's not a debilitating 22 like the Wolverines put on the floor, but it's still not what Wisconsin's typically allowing. So that is like a micro advantage, I think, for UCLA. And then foul-wise, Badgers have a pretty stark advantage here. Both teams generate a lot of fouls, but UCLA finds themselves in foul trouble more. Again, UCLA might backdoor their way into some more efficient roster constructions if like Bilodeau fouls or something and they have to play a Damara. But Wisconsin has more advantages in this game. This is also the number one free throw shooting team in the country. So if fouls do become an issue on either side, they're number one. UCLA is number 240. UCLA also a little more reckless with the ball, even though Wisconsin doesn't force a lot of turnovers. Wisconsin got back Nolan Winter and Max Klesmit in the first game. Klesmit, their true point guard. They've been having to use Kamari McGee in an elevated role that did not go how I thought it might. So I think Wisconsin is the preferred side here. This is one we'll play. I would not play at anything outside like a 2.5, but I think a 1.5 is completely fine. Perhaps the most interesting game of the day for talking purposes, North Carolina takes on Duke for the third time. 7.5 point spread in favor of Duke, 155 total. The big news, Cooper Flagg, ankle sprain, likely out. Malik Brown, he might be done for the year. He redislocated his shoulder. The whole story is how much do you think Cooper Flagg is worth? We'll get into the stylistics, but my model made this minus 13.5 with a healthy Cooper Flagg. Ken Pom made it 14. You look at all the publicly available efficiency metrics, you're getting about a minus 13, minus 14, somewhere in that ballpark for Duke. Without Cooper Flagg, the market is settled on about 7.5. And yes, Malik Brown is a part of this game too. Malik Brown was the engine of the Duke comeback in the second North Carolina game that we just saw last weekend. But to me, it's more a Cooper Flagg discussion. How much do you think Cooper Flagg is worth against the spread? Anyway, so Duke beats Georgia Tech yesterday by 8 points. They lost their studs. North Carolina has played 2 days in a row. They beat Notre Dame, crushed them. Barely beat Wake yesterday. It was a very tight game that they sort of had to surge late to get past Wake Forest. Duke won both regular season games, the second one being far closer. North Carolina actually led for part of that game before Duke crushed them in the second half. One on the glass, 39-26. The biggest issue for UNC is playing that tiny lineup they have. And really, Duke turned it over 14 times and Flagg got in foul trouble. Otherwise, that game probably would have been a pounding because the first one, Duke won by 17. Don't be confused. They had a 30-point lead deep into the game, took their foot off the gas, and allowed that to be a 17-point win. North Carolina's 1-9 against the top 25. Their only win is against UCLA on neutral court. 3 losses outside the top 60. Came in a mini stretch for this team. They played better of late. Lost to Stanford, lost to Wake, lost to Pitt. All those are outside the top 60. But this is kind of crazy. Among all the losses they have, only 3 of them are outside the top 25. It's just that the 3 of them are pretty bad. Stanford, Wake, and Pitt is not excusable. Duke is 4-3. They've beaten some against the top 25, that is. They've beaten Arizona, Auburn, Louisville, Illinois, crushed Illinois. All 3 of their losses are against top 21 teams, the worst one being Kansas. When you look at Duke, I'm just still not sure that this roster, I guess the real way to phrase this is with North Carolina's size disadvantage, I'm not sure they can contend against Duke. So let's just take off Malik Brown. Let's take off Cooper Flagg. Your point guard is split between Cadeau and RJ Davis, 6'1", 6 feet. Ian Jackson, 6'4". Seth Trumbull, 6'3". Only Drake Powell at 6'6" really gives you any size at guard. Withers and Van Allen Lubin are 6'9" and 6'8". Okay. That's a small lineup, very small. What is Duke? They're number 1 in effective height. And it's not just Flagg. It's not just Mace. It's not just Malik Brown. Malawach is 6'2". Now, you can do some weird things against Malawach. He was getting cooked in ball screens and pick and rolls. So maybe that is an advantage if you can find the right mismatch. But I trust Shire's ability to coach that up a little bit. You still have Concanupal at 6'7", Mason Gillis at 6'6", Nongba when you need him at 6'11". Isaiah Evans at 6'6". He's your shooting guard. Proctor's 6'6". Sion James is 6'6". I mean, like, there's so much size and length here. And honestly, the best construction might just be to play with Malawach off the floor. I don't know what they're going to do. And then from here, it's like, okay, Concanuple's a lottery pick. So is Flagg. He's the number 1 overall pick. But Isaiah Evans, this guy is an elite 5-star recruit. We've barely seen him this year. Caleb Foster would start on North Carolina right now. 6'5" has barely played. So it's just like you have replacements that are awesome. I think we're not giving enough credit to the replacements. Yes, Flagg on a normal team, like if you put Flagg on, I don't know, let's say you put Flagg on Cal. He's probably worth 10 points to the spread. But on this Duke team that has the elite recruits behind him, is he actually worth? It's when you evaluate these things, it's not just, okay, Flagg is worth this much to a normal game. You have to factor in what's coming in to replace him. And in this case, you're getting more roster construction with Isaiah Evans, with Concanupo, with Malawach and Sion James and Foster and Proctor. I think it's worth more than, I think Duke should be favored by more than 7 here. The spread we have on the screen is adjusted. If you had Cooper Flagg and it would be minus 14, 13.5, somewhere in that ballpark. BYU Houston, 7.5 point spread in favor of Houston, 136 total. Injuries. Catchings has been out for BYU. He's irrelevant, but Juwan Roberts sprained his ankle in that bye game against Colorado yesterday. I think Houston's done enough to lock up a 1 seed. I'm not sure we see Juwan Roberts here. In fact, I would call him doubtful. And BYU still required 96 points. They gave up 92 against Iowa State, who didn't have Keyshawn Gilbert and Tamin Lipsey to get to this point. So it's a weird game to evaluate. You had the really hyper close game shootout with Iowa State that didn't have 2 of their best players. BYU still able to find a way to win. Defense looked atrocious. Houston knocked off Colorado in a game that didn't require much effort, but at what cost? Juwan Roberts going down. Houston murdered BYU in the first game. It was at home, 86-55, out-rebounded them 37-24, turned BYU over 15 times. But BYU has played a lot better of late. They now have wins over Kansas, Arizona, Iowa State twice. The second one, you could put an asterisk on. They've lost games that are concerning, though. 5 outside the top 50, worst of which came to Providence. Not that TCU and Utah are much better. They are riding an 8-game win streak with 3 wins in the top 25. Houston, best body of work in the country outside of maybe Auburn, Florida, Bama, Duke. It's probably better than Duke. 6 wins in the top 25, BYU, Kansas twice, Arizona, Iowa State, Texas Tech. Houston has 1 loss outside the top 7. 3 of their 4 losses came in overtime. The 1 loss outside the top 7 to San Diego State was on a neutral court in Vegas. I mean, you can't really poke a hole in this Houston team. I guess if you want to, it's just that they beat an unhealthy Texas Tech and an unhealthy Iowa State. But I mean, even their losses are impressive. 3 overtime losses. But to me, like, what are we doing with Juwan Roberts, man? How much is Houston trying? A big narrative with Houston is they don't prioritize the conference tournament in an effort to preserve health for the NCAA tournament. They have another reason to now. Their guys are getting hurt. Arsenal got hurt in practice. He played yesterday, but it's an Achilles problem. He had it surgically repaired previously. Basically, what this comes down to is Houston's going to defend. Juwan and Tugler inside are awesome, and Francis is a capable replacement if Juwan can't go. Elite guards, they can shoot. They're 4th in three-point percentage. With Cryer and Uzan and Sharp, these players are elite. They all have excellent three-point percentages led by Cryer. BYU can't defend. They're 10th in three-point defense, 97th inside. They can shoot, though. 6th in effective field goal, awesome from 3, awesome inside as well. They do have good height. Richie Saunders is excellent in there. And if you were to poke a hole in Houston outside of health, they take too many 2-pointers with Juwan and Tugler. They need to shoot more threes. But yeah, man, this is rebounding's even, both these teams. BYU significantly taller, but you know the effort and coaching you're going to get from Houston. I would play Houston if you could guarantee full strength. I'm honestly considering BYU on the motivation side because I don't think we see Roberts, and I'm not sure what effort we're going to get out of Sampson in this team with some of the early exits they've taken in the Big 12 tournament at times. Other times they've played just fine. So you know me, I'm not really a big narrative player guy. I don't believe in them very often. I do believe in them, but I think they're hard to quantify, and people's ability to do so is largely overrated. But honestly, this game will probably just end up being a stay away because of those injuries. So let's move on. UConn Creighton, Second leg of the Big East doubleheader, 3.5-point spread in favor of UConn, 139.5 total. No major injuries. Pop Isaacs has been out for the whole year, basically. UConn just annihilated Villanova yesterday in a game where I was on Villanova, unfortunately. Creighton required overtime to beat DePaul, 85-81. I think we're seeing too much of an overreaction to the spread. I know at times the Garden is sort of a UConn home court environment. So if you wanted to make this argument, I think you potentially could give UConn an extra boost for the home court. If you did that, we still would make it inside 3.5. We make this about 1.5 in favor of UConn. And I think there's just, with the money pouring in on UConn right now, are we overrating this DePaul overtime game? I think the answer is probably yes. And we have a full body of work. These teams have played 30-plus games already. Let's not take a look at DePaul and get too crazy here. These teams split in the regular season. The home team won both times. Topeka and Creighton's win. UConn didn't have Liam McNeely, but the game was relatively even. The second one, also an extremely close game. UConn only won by 4 points. Creighton's 2-3 against the top 25. They beat St. John's, beat Kansas. 2 losses outside the top 50 to Nebraska and Georgetown. That was an early season Nebraska who took a real bad tumble at the end of the year. UConn's 1-2 against the top 25, but they did beat the Gonzaga team that everyone seems to love so much. 4 losses outside the top 50. Memphis, no shame there, but tons of shame in Colorado and Seton Hall. And as far as stylistics go, UConn is taller now that they have McNeely back, but you still have unique mismatches that Creighton creates inside with Kalkbrenner. This team is 3rd in effective height, 70th in rebounding. UConn's not trailing too far in either of those metrics. In fact, they're ahead in total rebounds, but that's just because they prioritize attacking the offensive glass. Creighton doesn't. They'll get back in transition. Awesome team defensive rebounding. Kalkbrenner's a wagon inside. You can't really score at the rim on Kalkbrenner. 12th in interior defense. The rim protection is so good here, so you're reliant on shooting. UConn's regressed a little bit in this area. They're 93rd in three-point percentage. But this is also like a carbon copy on the other side. UConn might not have the individual elite defender that Creighton does, but now that they have McNeely back, he's fine enough. Their perimeter or their interior defense is 15th overall. So Creighton's number 1 interior scoring. It's a tough matchup for them inside as well. 2 tough matchups inside. On the perimeter, Creighton's a little better defending there. UConn is 259th in perimeter defense, but the problem is Creighton has experienced a lot of shooting regression this year. Ashworth just flat out isn't the player people thought he was. He's awesome too, but you have to contextualize these things. Cam Jones, Ashworth, they get a lot of credit. What people don't talk about is how many shots they take. And at the end of the day, this is still a Mountain West transfer point guard who's undersized and has a lot of problems handling the ball. Creighton is 251 in turnovers committed. Now, UConn doesn't force any turnovers, and they've actually had a lot of problems themselves. Actually, this is maybe a mismatch on the other side because like Hassan Diarra, people forget, he's a low-level transfer too. And Aiden Mahaney, even worse, from St. Mary's. He's been an absolute train wreck this year. So both rosters are limited. It's strength on strength, weakness on weakness. What wins out? Very competitive game. UConn does get in a ton of foul trouble. I would isolate that largely to Samson Johnson. Creighton's the exact opposite. I heard the broadcast say last night, Kalkbrenner's never fouled out of a game. How wild is that? If that is true, like how wild? That's not my stat. I haven't cross-referenced that. I'm just taking it to be true, but that if true, that would be wild. Anyway, both these teams match up strength on strength. I do not think you can just give UConn the benefit of the doubt, even with the pseudo home court-ish advantage that UConn usually brings to the Garden for the Big East tournament. I'm probably going to play Creighton. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a better number. And after I ate a couple yesterday, ate a bad number on George Washington that cost me they win by 7 points. I had 7.5. It closed at 6.5. Just being a little more hesitant to try to grab the actual best line in all these games today, but plan on taking Creighton at some point. Clemson, Louisville, 1.5-point spread in favor of Clemson, 141 total. Injuries in the game. Corin Johnson, Kayshawn Pryor. Rain Smith didn't play. He had an ankle injury. He was out on the floor. He didn't warm up. Was walking around, no limps, so maybe Rain Smith returns. I don't know, but that is worth mentioning. Yesterday, these teams both played. Clemson beat SMU by 3. Louisville beat Stanford by 2. Close games on both sides. These teams played in the regular season. Louisville won 74-64 at home. Clemson won on the glass, 38-32, but they fouled 16 times. They gave up 20 free throws to Louisville and only shot 5 themselves. So that was basically the deciding factor in the game, the free throws. Louisville hit more than Clemson, a lot more. Clemson's 2-1 against the top 25 this year, beat Kentucky, beat Duke, where Cooper Flagg was sick. 3 losses outside the top 50, Memphis, South Carolina, and Georgia Tech. That was a 3 OT game. Georgia Tech was scrappy this year. They did that to a couple teams. Louisville's 1-3 against the top 25. Their win is over Clemson. They have 1 loss outside the top 30 to that very same scrappy Georgia Tech team. But Louisville, for the injuries they've sustained this year, and they've had some of the worst ones in the year with Corin Johnson and Keyshawn Pryor expecting to be big pieces in the rotation. But man, super impressed with them. They're tall still. Some of this surprised me, honestly. I haven't deep dove Louisville in a while. Clemson's 26th in effective height. Louisville's 64. Rebounding, Clemson's 9th. Louisville's 42nd. These are really impressive numbers for Louisville. As far as shooting-wise, close. Clemson 53 in effective field goal. Louisville 66. Big differences from 3. Clemson's 19th. Louisville's 201st. They've gotten pretty hot with Chucky Hepburn of late. They're taking a ton of threes. And Hepburn's run hot lately. It's not always been like that. 3-point defense, it definitely favors Clemson, 113 and 143. So Clemson's best path on paper is just shooting threes over the top. Hunter also got banged up a little bit, Dylan Hunter, I believe, so watch his status. That's at least worth mentioning. But then the opposite is true on the inside. Louisville's 19th in shooting from 2-point percentage. Clemson's 107th at defending the interior, which is a bit surprising considering Locken and Shiflin, but they're better on offense than defense. So this is another very even matchup. Turnovers project to be pretty even across the board for these two teams. Foul margin actually favors Louisville just a little bit because Clemson's not great at generating them. I played the 1.5 with Louisville. I expect this to move a little bit. I won't lie to you. I kind of regret taking this. I'm not sure I would take it now if you gave me the same choice. Largely just because Rain Smith, I think, is impactful. And I'm not sure where the spread moves throughout the day. I also think Clemson is peaking right now. These are things that are tough to quantify, and I feel like a narrative bro saying that, but we make this, minus like 0.9. So there's not that much value in favor of Louisville mathematically. Maybe it's efficient if you take out Rain Smith. So I don't know. There's a chance I even buy out of this. We're going to take it up a little bit and try to get some more information, but it's Louisville or pass. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do in this game, to be honest with you guys. But I did play the 1.5 so far. It's on my card right now. I don't know if it'll remain on there. Arizona, Texas Tech, 2.5-point spread in favor of Tech, 153 total. This game, some injuries that might not be noteworthy, or at least publicly available yet. We saw Chance McMillian get hurt again yesterday. Barely played in the second half, and Darian Williams, limping around the court for Texas Tech. Probably not significant. I would guess they both play, but you never know. At least watch that. Arizona beat Kansas yesterday. Texas Tech knocked off Baylor by 2. They seemed split the regular season. Tech won the first one. Arizona only shot 17% from 3. Take it easy. Caleb Love's all I really have to say there. Tech out-rebounded them 50-34. But Arizona made some switches in the second game. They end up winning 82-73. They played VSAR 30 minutes in that second game. Texas Tech also only shot 38% from 2. I think that's a VSAR stat, man. He's such a good rim protector. 7-footer for Arizona, who did not always play this role. It's been up and down. Texas Tech still decent on the glass in that game, but that switch had a big difference. We'll see what they do today. Tech is 4-4 against the top 25. Beat BYU, Arizona, Houston, Kansas. Good wins there. The Houston win's huge. Arizona's 4-8 against the top 25. Should be 3-9, but half quarter from Caleb Love got them a win over Iowa State. And from there, they beat BYU, Texas Tech, and Kansas. They have losses outside the top 50 to West Virginia and Kansas State. Stylistically, I guess the biggest thing we already hinted at it is what is the rotation that Arizona uses? They came back and they gave Trey Townsend more minutes than they should have recently. The Horizon transfer that has no business playing in this conference. They got to play VSAR, got to play Carter Bryant. When they do, this team has a height advantage over Tech, who's undersized with Toppin and Williams inside. Williams who's banged up. Arizona's 10th in rebounding, 44th in interior defense. I think that jumps with VSAR on the floor. But there's a couple coaching things with Arizona. How many minutes do VSAR and Bryant get? How many threes is Caleb Love allowed to huck up there? We've said this for a couple days in a row now that Arizona's played. They have good shooters. They have players over 40%. Del Orso is a fine shooter. Caleb Love is not. He's shooting 32%, and he's taking 1 million threes. He's well over 200 attempts on the year. He drives their three-point percentage down to 273, and honestly, he drives their effective field goal down to 97. Texas Tech is the better shooting team. They have better shooters overall. They're 19th in three-point percentage, and Arizona's 125th defending that area of the floor. But man, there's a couple things in the game. I don't want to back Tech on the injury front. I don't know who's going to play and at what capacity. They have a lot of advantages. They're the better shooting team. They're better on defense. Turnover margin vastly favors them. But Arizona did show improvements with coaching in the second game, playing their bigs more minutes. But it just, to me, that's not been consistent. So do you want to back it? And second, how many bad threes is Caleb Love going to take? Because he takes too many. So right now it's Arizona or pass on the injury front. We'll see where this comes in throughout the day. There's a good chance I play this one way or another. I would love to play Tech at full strength. If they're not at full strength, they're just not deep enough for me to really consider. And then Arizona would be the case, the side I would like to play, which is weird. You're talking about this on both sides. Let's briefly touch on a couple more. Big game in the Mountain West. Boise takes on New Mexico. Leading Boise State here. They've been a lot better. They just can't shoot threes. But this New Mexico team, if you're looking at, and it's like a kind of actually a bad matchup. They're way worse defending the three. But Boise should crush them on the glass. 8-58 overall. The only real concern there is New Mexico is tall, but that's a huge game. Make sure you have your eyes on that. We'll probably play Bethune-Cookman in the SWAC. I'm interested in Wichita State plus 9.5 against Memphis, the team we've been backing all tournament long. St. Louis against Loyola Chicago. I think St. Louis is not getting enough credit against a pretty equal team in terms of talent in Loyola Chicago on the other side, and I did play Middle Tennessee State over Jacksonville State. But thank you guys for watching. We'll be back tomorrow talking about whatever semifinals and finals we have available to us. Until then, good luck. We'll see you later.